Now that we've got our schema build up on our CloudKit dashboard, let's create the model objects in our code base here. So back in Xcode, on the grub folder, right click, new group, and it's going to be called model, right? So in that model, right click, new file, Command N, whatever you want to do, I don't care. Swift file, hit next. We're going to call this DDG location. Hit create. Okay, we have a blank Swift file. So what we're going to do is struct DDG location. And now we're going to start adding some properties. I'll make this a little bigger here. All right, so first up, we'll do let name. That is of type string. This is going to kind of like morph and evolve a little bit over time, what we're going to do here. But we're going to get the basic structure of our object first. Let's see, we also have description, which is a string. Then we have let, I'm just kind of going off the top of my head, square asset, that is a CK asset. Oh, I don't have CK asset. Watch, what is that? Xcode says, well, we need to import CloudKit. I don't know if CloudKit brings in Foundation. Some of these bring in Foundation, some don't. I always do trial and error to figure it out. Okay, apparently CloudKit does as well. Now we can do let banner asset, CK asset, okay, name, description, address, right? Let address, and of course, to be safe, you would like look at your notes or look at your design to do this. I'm going off the top of my head just because I'm like recording a video and I don't want to have to like tab on screens and all that good stuff. Plus I have like these screens like burned into my head so I can like see the screen pretty vividly on like what I need. Let location, okay, this one will probably need an import. CL location. No, apparently CloudKit handles that as well. You learn new things every day. All right, now let web site URL equal string, and then let phone number equals string. Okay, so here's what I'm gonna do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 8 of them. I'm gonna go back to CloudKit here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Cool, okay. Got everything. However, this record name here that's queryable, we're going to need that. So let's go back to Xcode, and up above that, let's say let CK record ID, and that is of type CK record.id. So the reason we want this property is because, like I said, we're going to create a reference from our DDG profile to a location when we check in. So when we create that reference, we need to know what record ID we're creating a reference to. So for example, we'll do something like, location.ck record ID. That's how we'll create this reference. So that's why we need that. Now, if you've got your Swift basics down, with structs, we get what's called a member-wise initializer, which is basically just like the default initializer based on all of our properties. So like, for example, if I do let location equal DDG location, you'll see I didn't have to create an initializer. I just got all the properties as the default. That's what's called a member-wise initializer. Quick little 2-second review. We are going to forego our member-wise initializer. Let me tell you why. Because we're going to create our own initializer that takes in a CK record, because that's what we get back when we make a call to CloudKit, right? When I make a query to get all my locations, I don't get DDG locations back. I get CK records back. And it's on us on the client side to convert that CK record into our DDG location object so we can use it throughout our app. Okay, so that's why we're going to create an init, and it's going to take in a record. It is of type CK record. And then now it's kind of some tedious typing. And if you're familiar with a dictionary, how you kind of like create properties from a dictionary, like when you're parsing JSON manually and not using Codable, very similar. In fact, pretty much the same thing. So that's what we're going to do here. So we'll say CK record ID equals record. This is the record we pass in, dot record ID. And then we'll keep going down the list, except it's not always going to be that simple, right? We're not going to have like record.name. This is where we kind of have to dig in a little bit. So we'll do name equals record, and then now not dot, we're not doing that. Again, this is like, accessing a dictionary. We want the value at name, because a record is just a key value pair. So for the key name, we want the value, but in this scenario, we don't know what type it is. Again, just like you're parsing JSON. So you have to do as string. And I put these as optional just in case something messes up with the server and we get nils back. That's always possible. So our default value is going to be NA. We should never see that, but just in case we do, we're not going to get crashes. We'll just see like NA in our UI. So we just go down the list essentially and do that. So description equals record And then at the key description, now you notice we're stringly typed here, which we're going to fix in a second. So like if I misspelled description either here or up on my schema in CloudKit, like I said, to be careful about spelling errors, ain't going to work. So be careful there. As string, and then we'll just nil coalescing just in case. Again, we should just never see this. To be honest with you, I'm doing this mostly so to make this initializer like cleaner. You'll see. I got to make that optional. Now let's talk about this stringly type stuff first, because we're going to be accessing values for keys on records like quite often throughout the app. So so I'm not constantly typing out strings and worrying about spelling, we're going to create some constants for those up here so I can use them, later on in the app. So let's say static let k name, and that's kind of a convention for constants to put the lowercase k in front of it, and that is going to equal name. So how this works, if I do Command B to make sure we get it, instead of like typing name here, I can do DDG location dot k name. And then now throughout the app, anytime I'm trying to access a record, the dictionary, I can just do that. I don't have to worry about like typing it out. So now let's create the one for description. Static let k description equal description. There we go. And then I'm copy that, and then we'll do DDG location dot and paste that k description. There we go. So we're going to do that for all these properties here. So the next ones up are square asset and banner asset. So square asset, this work is a little different, right? So we want record, same thing here, except let's create our constant up here. Static let k square asset, and I'm going to line up my equal signs later. Don't you worry. Square asset is how I believe I typed it. So what you're typing here has to match exactly what you put in the CloudKit dashboard. So if something's not showing up or you get an error, probably because you misspelled something. So now we'll do DDG location dot k square asset. Now, neatly using nil coalescing for a string, super easy. You just put a string in there. Well, to nil coalesce a CK asset, not so simple, because what you do on the other side of the nil coalescing is basically like initialize an empty one. In the CK asset, now you gotta have a file URL. Like it's just, I found that to be just a little bit much. So what we did with the CK asset is we just did some implicitly unwrapping of the optional up here on 19 and 20, and we're gonna handle the nil cases in a future video when we handle our images. I have a way to basically, if CK asset is nil, we have those default placeholder images that we've been using in our UI so far, and we're going to use those images if the banner asset is nil. But we'll handle that later. For now, we're going to implicitly unwrap that again for neatness. So the next thing we need is our banner asset. So create the constant for the name there, static let k banner asset equal banner, and I'm just hoping I spelled these right. I'm pretty sure I did. We'll find out if something doesn't work. Banner asset, or you could be the responsible developer and double check as you go. But you know what? YOLO. DDG location dot, I can't spell, dot k banner asset. There we go. As CK asset, and again, same thing. We're implicitly unwrapping up there. Next, we have address and location. So I'm just going to do all these now, right? And now that I've kind of showed you the process, so static let k address equal address, static let k location equal location, static let k website URL equal website URL, and then static let k phone number equal phone number. And then now we get to have fun and line these up, right? So much fun. Looks so much better. Okay. Again, if you hate that, don't do it. It's fine. So now that we have those constants there, now we can just come down here and do address equals record. And like I said, it may seem redundant to do that right here, but you'll see as we use this throughout the app, you'll be very happy we have these constants. K address as string, and if that is nil for some weird reason, because the reason why this almost doesn't matter is because it's highly unlikely that just the address will be nil, right? If something is wrong with the server, the entire record won't come through, and we'll handle those error cases, in our like kind of like network CloudKit manager, right? It's what would have to happen for like just name to be nil is someone would have to go into our database, our schema, and delete the name, so not impossible, of course, but I'm not worried about handling that error case perfectly because it's insanely unlikely. So location equals website URL. And again, worst case scenario, if someone does break in and do that, like we're just going to see NAs, it's, the world's not going to end. Website URL, or not website URL, record. Sometimes talking and typing is very difficult. .k, location as. And then now here we'll do CL location. This one isn't so bad to initialize an empty one, so we'll go ahead and do that. CL location, because you just take a latitude and longitude, and you can just do like 0, 0. Again, it'll just put it at some random place, but you're not going to get a crash there. Website URL, and again, people may disagree on like how to handle these errors. That's perfectly fine. The way I look at like error handling is the cost benefit, right? So the cost of like properly handling these errors for a insanely small likelihood of them coming back nil is a lot. It's going to make my code messy, which is harder for other people to read and use. And that could be like a slower, productivity of my team if my code is filled with all that. Now, again, you have to, make the cost benefit analysis of yourself. Whereas like if one of these was nil in your product and it was like game breaking, of course, handle the error. But I don't view this as like a high risk. So that's why I'm doing it that way. And that is kind of like the art of error handling, right? It's not, you have some decisions to make to triage like, the trade-offs of handling all the errors. Because, you've seen the error handling in the code. It can just make the code incredibly cluttered. And I try to avoid that if it's unnecessary. Okay, so website URL. Record. Sorry for that little rant. I feel like I'm trying to like fill dead air while I just type forever. That's not DDGLocation dot website URL as, and then string, and just nil coalesce it to n/a. And then finally, phone number equals record DDGLocation dot k phone number, and then as string, and then just again n/a. Now, what I'm going to do here is obviously line these up, of course. Again, just come on. How can you argue with that? How can you argue with how clean that looks? Ugh. The people that bash this, I don't get it. Anyway, so that is our basic initializer. And here's the thing. When we do an initializer like this on our struct, this is why I said we're foregoing our member-wise initializer. You no longer have the member-wise initializer. So now if I try to initialize a location, right, like let location equal DDG location, now you see I only can initialize it with a CK record. I no longer have the member-wise initializer. I'm okay with that on our record because we're not initializing that in our app. However, our profile we will, so you'll see how we handle that. But basically, you just write you put the initializer in an extension of DDG location, and you'll keep your member-wise initializer. Little Swift tip there. We're not worried about that on this particular object. Okay, so we have the location done. I'm gonna go ahead and stop this video. I know I said we're gonna do a lot in this one video. Again, I'm trying to not make these like marathon videos. So in the next video, we're gonna handle our DDG profile, which should be very similar to this. And then we're gonna create some mock data with a DDG location to basically fill in where our UI, where we just hard-coded things. Now we'll be able to pass a location in, which kind of starts to build the infrastructure for when we get locations, from CloudKit. We can just switch out our mock data with the real stuff and we should be good to go. All right, on to the next one.